Hello everyone, my name is Jeff Neville and welcome to Selective Imagery. From Selective Imagery. This is going to be quite a different video, and what this is regarding is over the last several years, to say the least, there have been changes at Huntington Beach State Park, which is advertised as one of the best nature preserves in this part of the country, in Murrells Inlet, South Carolina. And over the last few years anyway, there's been a big shift and change in terms of the types of birds that show up in the area, how many. There's been a lot of fish kills, significant fish kills. This year there was a significant fish kill. Last year it was significant, and I think there was another one maybe 4 years ago. So things have been changing. So everybody's saying, well, what the heck's going on? Why are things changing? So a lot of it has to do, in my opinion, with changes in the management philosophy of how they want to do things in the park, specifically Mullet Pond, which is a brackish water pond, which is on the other side of the main road when you drive into the park, and on the left side you have a tidal marsh area. And at one time, the pond was not a pond, because before there was a road, it was all part of the tidal marsh. It only became a pond when the road got put in. And there are pipes that run under the road from one side to the other, and there are control valves on it now, so one can adjust the water levels, introduce water or remove water from the pond as required. And so that system is there. Although it is a manual system, it's not automated. But anyway, out of my concerns, the concerns of many people that I've talked to that camp there and ask the photographers questions, other photographers that go there, other people that live in the community that go there, have seen things that are bothersome. So I approached WMBF News, which is a NBC News affiliate in the Myrtle Beach area, and I suggested that they look into this situation of the fish kill. I offered a lot of documentation and research that I did to them. Unfortunately, I'm sure due to schedule restrictions and how busy the reporter was doing other stories, that unfortunately they did not have the opportunity to request and obtain the information that I said I had prior to scheduling an interview with myself, followed by an interview with the park manager Wednesday the 28th of this month of September. So the purpose of this video is I'm going to try to put a link in this video, and if that doesn't work, here is the path to the WNBF Facebook page, this will get you to the story. Okay, so this is where you can see the original story that came on the news on Thursday. Okay, I will try to put that link in here somewhere, but in case it doesn't work, you just saw it. And I feel that the story ended up being predominantly the narrative, where the park controlled the narrative of the entire storyline of the story. Anything that I had to say, unfortunately, a lot of the things that I spoke to the reporter ended up on the cutting room floor, as they would say. So I didn't feel that my viewpoint and my concerns were adequately expressed in what was released on television. So as a result of that, I went on the WNBF Facebook page and I did a 14-minute video to basically do a rebuttal to the commentary made by the park manager, so that I would have an opportunity to say what was not shared in that news story. So what I'm asking you, my viewers, to do is to watch the original broadcast through the link I just showed you, and I will have a video, a section here as part of this YouTube video showing you the rebuttal video that I did. And go to the WNBF Facebook page after you have watched the original presentation on the news, after you have watched my rebuttal, which I will include in this video, and please go on their Facebook page underneath that story and leave a comment regarding my rebuttal. And you can be pro, you could be con, it doesn't matter to me. It's not up to me to tell you what to do or tell you what to say. You can draw your own opinions. You may have no opinion. You may do some research on your own. Okay, whatever you want to do. But I just wanted to set the record straight and feel that at least my voice is being heard somehow. And people can draw their own conclusions, and people could choose to chastise me or agree with me, and I'm okay with that. I mean, I put my face out there, I put my name out there. They used some of my photos in the story on the news media and to show the Fishkill event. And I appreciate that they did that, so at least people could see what was going on, because there was someone who was in the original broadcast who stated that she had never seen a dead fish in the park before. So I'm sure that was a true statement. But if, depending on how often you go and when you go, it is something that you may never see. But the park did not deny that it happened, and they know that it's happened, and that was in the video. And of course, those of us who go to the park a lot know when it happens and that it's happened. So I'm asking you to watch the rest of this content and go on their Facebook page and look things up and leave a comment. And that's about it. And as I always say, enjoy life, capture some of it, get out there and get some great images, irregardless of what brand of camera or type of camera you use, and irregardless of what genre you choose to shoot. Just do what makes you happy, because that's the most important thing. Doesn't it make you feel good taking the pictures that you take? It really doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. So take care, and we'll see you next time. My name is Jeff Neville, and recently I was involved in a story that was on WNBF News on Thursday, the 28th of September, regarding the Fishkill event at Huntington Beach State Park in Mullet Pond. I was interviewed along with the park manager separately. When these stories ran on the news, obviously they were broken down into different segments, and it was kind of hard to piece everything together unless you watched all these segments that were on each viewing of the news schedule for that evening. And unfortunately, I got my 5 seconds of commentary in the interview. The park manager managed to squeeze out 2 to 3 minutes to express her point of view, and a lot of the information provided in the story was obviously more or less slanted towards what the park management had to say versus anything that I chose to say. Now, I did a lot of what I spoke about during the interview process was not reflected in the news story. Detailed research on my part was offered by me but not obtained by WMBF News prior to these interviews, which I feel if they had asked for, and I would have gladly given it to them at any time if they had time to read that information, they may have structured some of their questions differently when approaching the interview with the park manager. So I ended up giving them this information literally minutes before I got interviewed for that reporter to use if she so chose as she was compiling the story. Now, because I feel that it wasn't really a level playing field, and other than me looking foolish on TV saying I was sad by the events that occurred at the park and got to say that the obvious, that there were dead fish and shrimp floating on the top, that was pretty much the extent of my involvement with the story. So I want to offer my response to the park's extensive narrative. Where the park and I agree is that we both love wildlife. I don't feel the park hates wildlife. That would be a foolish thing for me to say. And I would like to think that they don't feel the photographers and the people that visit the park mean any harm for the wildlife either. We all should be caring about the same thing. Now, the fish kill, another thing we agree on is the fish kill was caused by oxygen deprivation. And there was literally, you have to have less than 2 parts per million of dissolved oxygen in the water, which would result in an instantaneous fish kill event, which is what occurred. Now, our opinions do differ. Introducing marsh water will increase the salinity of the pond due to the recent efforts by the park to reduce it by literally draining the water out, and as stated by park management in this interview, waiting for rain. What lives in the pond are saltwater creatures that can live in brackish water conditions. They will not die just as a result of the salinity increase. The increase in salinity can, as the park manager pointed out, can reduce the oxygen level. But it's not an issue if you manage and exchange water between the marsh side and the pond side. You have to allow water to go in both directions on a regular basis, and this is something that the park no longer does at all. They just drain the pond and hope for rain to keep the salinity levels down. Remember, before you even had gate valves that you could open and close, you just had open pipes underneath the road. So you had the same salinity on the marsh side as you had on what is now a pond due to the road being put in. Regarding her statement that water levels are no deeper than 9 inches, well, that's not true, at least not in every area of the pond, because gators can disappear under the water and go looking for food sources, what little there is left. And they wouldn't be able to do that if that part of the pond was only 9 inches deep. And you also have ospreys that can dive in a few locations in the pond when they've lowered the water level, but it is only in a few locations. Now, since the pond, and the only reason you're going to have 9 inches or lower to begin with is because of the pond strategy in lowering the water level and fooling around with it between November and May. So in the past, the water levels were much higher. Ask any photographer that's lived down here, at least in the last 5 years. Many have lived down here 10, 20 years or longer. But in the past, water levels were higher. Water flowed in and out in both directions. to get food sources into the pond and to add fresh oxygen-rich water from the marsh. So I sit there and I ask myself, and I say, why is the park all of a sudden so concerned about low salinity levels in the pond to the point of not introducing water into it from the marsh, which would be higher in oxygen, since moving water has higher O2 levels than sitting pond water? And the water theoretically would be cooler since the water is not stagnant on the marsh side. If they added the water, the fish kill would be minimized or eliminated, providing you had an exchange of water from both sides, especially in the hot summer months. But as stated, they won't introduce marsh water into the pond since the pond and marsh salinities would be balanced, no longer having the pond side controlled to 15 parts per million. My own investigation led me to reading a scientific study sponsored by Ducks Unlimited that involved many biologists, some by name, who live in South Carolina. It was titled Management of the South Atlantic Coastal Wetlands for Waterfowl. Then after reading through it a little bit, in my mind, all of a sudden the light bulb turned on. This document is used by many state agencies to understand the biology of wetlands, whether they're fresh, salt, or brackish waters, and how to manage them to optimize the environments for waterfowl. Some content from that document is as follows. They state, the manipulation of water quality, primarily salinity, water levels and salinity are manipulated to retard growth of undesirable competing vegetation and promote growth of preferred plant species, i.e. food and cover plants that are attractive to waterfowl and other wetland wildlife. Manipulation of the physical and chemical factors affecting plant community composition is required to succeed in managing coastal habitats for waterfowl and other wildlife. Manipulation of water levels and salinity are most effective in improving habitats on managed properties. So it became obvious to me and apparent to me that the park is changing the biology in the pond to support waterfowl who visit for approximately 2 to 3 months. And it should be noted, they can't have young and brackish water if they were around in the springtime, because studies show that exposure to 9 parts per thousand of salt is deadly for the young. And the park, by their own statements, is trying to control it at 15 parts per thousand. So the young would need fresh water to be born healthy. Adults can handle and drink salt water for limited periods of time because they have salt glands. Now here's another partial statement out of that document. Trade-off often exists in targeting wetland management for a particular species such as waterfowl. There you go. My conclusion was the park's recent 2 to 3 years of lowering pond water, lowering salinities is all about the ducks and the heck with everything else. They are responsible for the fish kills. The words from the mouth of the park manager herself in this story that aired yesterday. Mullet Pond was built nearly 100 years ago. Mr. Huntington had a vision for the pond to protect and conserve species of migratory waterfowl that were endangered in the 1930s. The park manager finally confirmed my suspicions with her own statements. So basically, for around 90 years, the park did not honor this vision, and in the last 3 is trying to change the biology of the pond. And it's funny how the park has a freshwater pond aptly named Mallard Pond that could be improved for these freshwater ducks, while Mullet Pond is named after a saltwater fish that can live in brackish water, of which many have died with the fish kills in the last 2 to 3 years. This changed approach and stubbornness to introduce marsh water into the pond results in the following. reduce food sources for birds that frequent the pond most of the year, including, of course, the alligators. You remove food, where do the gators go? Do you cull them all? All of a sudden, we have no gators in the park? White pelicans that come in the winter to feed on large flounder and large fish will have no food. It's all died off. They may or may not be able to be willing to hang around for smaller fish. Ospreys lose a food source as well, being unable to dive for food in 9 inches of water. And of course, you have the variety of egrets, herons, wood storks, and spoonbills that also feed in that area. The park management, in switching priorities, is changing the park forever. The public who finance the park should at least have a say in how the park manages the pond. Shorebirds can get plenty of food at low tide or at the beaches. This is all about the ducks. This should be an open discussion, in my opinion, is consider making Mallard Pond the primary location for the freshwater waterfowl, since it is, these are freshwater ducks. And anything that's saltwater species can continue to go to Mullet Pond. Now you know my part of the story in full, and you can make your own decisions, do your own research, and derive your own opinions. But it's something that needs to be discussed rather than all of a sudden we just see, less anhingas, less cormorants, species that aren't there in the numbers they were in before, osprey that are few and far between. People used to be able to see osprey diving for fish every day. Now you have maybe 4 or 5 juvies that are there. But we used to have a heck of a lot more. You used to have birds on the dead trees, what we call the boneyard area, eating fish all the time. You don't see them there anymore eating fish. The environment in the park has changed a lot. It's due to the management strategy and what they're trying to do. And they need to be upfront with everybody what their intent is. And, we now know what their intent is with the pond is to try to make it as close to freshwater as they can to support the grasses and the plant life that the ducks like to eat. Okay, but there's a cost to that. There's a trade-off, as they say, with that. You help one species out, you're going to hurt different species, and those other species have been there for a long, long time. So this needs to be a discussion, and right now there is no discussion. But I just wanted to set the record straight as to why I initiated this story with the news agency. And I wish you all well. I hope the park, thinks about this a little bit. I hope public opinion is allowed to, create a discussion, and we'll see how it goes. Take care, everyone.